there's a saying from our teachers is that like you don't find the Enneagram finds you.
Yep.
And I think it's because only when we're at a state of openness
Yeah.
in seeing something beyond what we assume to be reality,
Yeah.
like it's just gonna go right over our head.
All right, let's go. Today's topic is on the Enneagram personality types. Today we have two great hosts. We have Miss Melinda Olson, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, founder of Invitera Counseling, and co-founder of Havenly Counseling Collective. We also have Joanne Kim, an Enneagram therapist at AlignUs Counseling and feelings translator at Intelligent Emotions. Welcome to the broadcast, ladies. We're so grateful to have you all here with us today.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Happy to be here.
All right. Well, right before we get started on our topic today, do you mind giving us a little background on your current career?
Yeah. Go You go.
Well, so the main work that I do with people comes from me drawing out who each person is. And a lot of that has to do with our core values. You know, all of us have like deeply buried values and dreams and aspirations. And it's my big passion to be able to connect with people, get them to know themselves well, and to actually nurture and draw them out. So under AlignUs Counseling with Enneagram therapy, I help people find out what their reflexive autopilot patterns are that actually keep them stuck, so that they can know how to sidestep those patterns. And then under Intelligent Emotions, as a feelings translator, I help people use the power of their feelings to be able to find out who they actually are, what matters most to them, and actually to draw that forth.
And I do I have two businesses, but I really like focusing on the depth work. So through Invitera Counseling, I also use the Enneagram, but I like to see people who are a little further along in their Enneagram journey. They might already know what they are, like what type they are and how they identify and their patterns, but there's a lot of very deep work kind of getting beyond those patterns and doing psychological work that will help them to kind of break through levels of awareness. So that's what I love to focus on. And then I also love creating beautiful, kind, inclusive spaces for people and communities. So with Havenly, I co-founded that. And so we just really I love to create spaces of community and care for both my individual clients and also for clinicians. So that's where I spend most of my time.
All right. Well, look, we are very, very blessed to have both of you guys here, and as is our audience, as I am a big believer in the Enneagram, as Joanne knows, but it has truly been a renaissance for me ever since I became aware of this tool of self-discovery, as there are many tools, out there. However, this one just, clicked for me. And so that passion that's kind of ignited by learning my Enneagram type is kind of helped me want to help spread the message. Like, hey, this is such a great tool. It will literally, track your progress of life from when you were a baby and why you do the things that you do now, it's so perfectly at that. It was a little scary because it's like nobody else is supposed to know my thoughts. I don't know. It's just so deep,
Yeah. Who read my mail?
And so I'm so happy to be creating this whole series on the Enneagram type with you guys. So why don't we jump right in, and what is the Enneagram for people who are unaware of this famous term, I would say, and what's the background of how the Enneagram kind of came to fruition?
So I'll take the Enneagram. The Enneagram is a system at its most, I guess, shallow personality, right? So 9 descriptors of personality, though that can be expanded into 27 or more. every describing 9 core types of how you do life, your coping mechanisms, your motivations in life. And yeah, so that is at its most shallow what the Enneagram is. However, it's also a system of growth and understanding how you can grow beyond that coping mechanism or those motivations, how you can become more aware of what drives you and what what patterns make you do the things you do. Joanne likes to call them autopilot patterns. And how you can grow beyond those autopilot patterns and into the highest self, your highest self.
Yeah, I think you obviously hit that on the head, because my understanding of it is kind of like, this is who you are at your most basic level, this personality. It's your autopilot. It's what was formed for you to survive when you were a young kid. It's, we had to learn based on our environment, what survival techniques we needed to employ, what boundaries were healthy for us at that time. And so becoming aware of that now helps us be able to, hey, understand some of the patterns of why we do the things that we do. But then more importantly, how can we, based on that awareness, create an action plan to improve ourselves and improve our day-to-day interactions and our, relationships and so forth. So it's truly beautiful.
Great. And also, I think just to put something in there too, it's about understanding, like most people come to Enneagram work understanding that these patterns aren't working for them anymore, right? They might have worked when we were kids, but they don't really work for us now. And in fact, they kind of get us into hot water, or they cause suffering for us. And so the Enneagram can help us grow beyond that too, which is huge.
That's right. And just a little bit about, like, how did the Enneagram kind of come about? How long has it been around for? Is it something that most psychologists are pushing towards, that this is the real deal, for our personalities and becoming aware of ourselves?
Yeah, I would say that what we know about the Enneagram now is like the latest iteration, but this is a framework that's been described over thousands of years. It hasn't maybe like been put into like a system of 9 personality types per se, but lots of different ancient traditions, Christianity, Judaism, Sufism, like from different parts of the world, when people have really dedicated their attention towards personal work, there were these common descriptors. I think in a lot of esoteric like teaching spaces, the teachers basically found out these patterns of what's keeping their students stuck from moving on to the next level. And so when you look throughout ancient history, there are traces or bits and pieces of the Enneagram that we hear about, like the 7 deadly sins that was around like hundreds of years ago. You just tack on 2 more and it becomes 9 that correspond with each of the 9 types. The version that we know about it has kind of been like a recent new wave that's been around since the 1970s, where teachers used to tell their students, like, don't tell anyone about this because other people won't understand and won't know how to wield it well. Because we're talking about people's core needs, motivations, things that are subconscious, and in the hands of wrong people, like, it can be very dangerous. But Berkeley students, being who they are, they decided to go break the rules, and they wrote down these things on paper. So what we read about the Enneagram nowadays is that version from 1970s and on. There's not a whole lot of integration between the Enneagram and psychology from in terms of how openly psychologists and any mental health professional accepts the Enneagram yet, because they kind of write it off as being like super woo-woo, and there's so much emphasis on like reasoning, science, metrics, data. I do think that there's a heavy head type bias in overly looking for those things, as if other things that don't quite fit those metrics don't exist or don't matter. And so we're seeing more of a trend of them being more integrated together, but I think it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I think I remember mentioning I was so excited when I was seeing my therapist, and he's a psychologist, and I was like, oh my God, I'm an Enneagram type 7, and I'm a wing this, and he was like, what? and like, it wasn't just like, he had heard of the Enneagram type, but I want to say that he wasn't as versed into it. So my excitement was quickly, shot down a little bit, but, it's okay. And, I think that's a part of understanding that this is still becoming more and more slowly getting more accepted. And yeah, it's really, truly a wonderful thing. And clearly with you guys have been on this Enneagram journey for quite some time. What made you guys fall in love with the Enneagram, so much so that it has now become a part of your life path?
That's such a great question. I love that question so deeply. I actually was introduced to the Enneagram 20 years ago, when I was in college. And at the time, one of the people who was in leadership over me, I was a part of a spiritual community, who was really into the Enneagram. And she was like, you're not going to understand this until you're 30. So go ahead and try it, and we'll see what happens. And I'm like, want to bet? And so I engaged the Enneagram, and I wouldn't say fell in love, but became deeply intrigued, because I found that when you found your number, they've read your journal, you feel like your journal's been read. So I think a lot of like, oh man, like that's not great. It can happen. So that's what started off the journey. And I've been trying to gain information ever since, but it kicked off even more when I got introduced to the Chestnut Pious Academy about 5 years ago. And that was the same time that this person and I, Joanne and I, started working together. And
we are best friends in work lives, and heavily in each other's splash zones.
Yes.
And all the growth steps, all the improvements we've made along the years is partially because we kept, chafing.
There's got to be times though, because you guys know each other's type so well, that you can like
we steal way out of it.
No. We're like, who is this about right now? Or she's like, right now. We're like, oh dear God. So it's good. Yeah, it's helpful.
It's like, that's what I want people, our audience, to realize, is that once you realize, what your own type is, then, you're going to want to have your husband or wife or girlfriend's, type figured out, because it's such a great way to better communicate with your significant relationships, that way, them. And if they're acting certain. Very true. Very, very true. Yes. No, you're right. But yeah, I see your sentiment in this, and I'm totally with you guys in this journey. And it truly is empowering to really know yourself in and out. There's a power that comes with that. And I feel like the Enneagram allows you to know, not just the good sides of you, but the bad sides of you, which again, I feel like when we're on this journey, we are going to find like the uglier sides of our personality, or I call them the shadow sides, right? And it's really important for us to be compassionate about those aspects of us, because those were built, again, at a very young age. We don't even remember how those personality sides to us have developed. But all we can do was, it was used as a way of survival, which is what's gotten us here. But now for us, I feel, to take the next leap, it's important for us to really delve in, figure out who we are, what motivates us, and then push forward, and really get to the best version of Melinda, Joanne, Nikhil, everyone out there.
And that's exactly how I found the Enneagram to be for me. And I feel like you too, like you fell in love with the Enneagram.
I mean, it's a love-hate relationship.
Right, exactly.
Well, I think for me, there's a saying from our teachers, is that like, you don't find the Enneagram finds you.
Yep.
And I think it's because only when we're at a state of openness in seeing something beyond what we assume to be reality, like it's just going to go right over our heads. And so I think I had already cracked open like a couple months, right, like a couple of years prior to it. So when she introduced it to me, and I did some digging, at least for my type 4 is known to like be super arrogant in like staking and monopoly over authenticity. It's like, oh, like I know myself so well. So like fours often could be like the best therapy clients or whatever because they're already like soul searching and all that. And what really stood out to me was like, holy crap, like this is how I create my own suffering. And it's like I thought I was like being all, you know, reflective and like self-aware and all that stuff. And instead I learned that I was actually being self-referencing, not self-aware. I focus on a lot of my internals, but that's actually what's causing a lot of problems. And so it was kind of like a match to like, you know, dry grass, like it just set ablaze really quickly. And
and then I think we both got each other on fire.
Yep.
All right, I love that. Well, look, I think a lot of people are going to be, you know, I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people, and I'm hoping that they'll see the passion clearly that's coming through all of us, and it's gonna, you know, actually, what actually is funny is that when I did get find out about the Enneagram, and I went to my friends because I'm so excited about it, they're like, Nick, where have you been? You know, in the sense that a lot of their companies, and I didn't realize this, but if you're working in a tech company, a lot of them make them do some sort of Enneagram personality test so that they can better understand how to motivate their employees. So it's something that's, you know, clearly been around for a while, and it's being used in many different, you know, avenues, you know, around the community. And so it's just really exciting when you first like learn about it, and you know, you're empowering yourself. It's an awesome thing. So why don't we jump into the Enneagram personalities and just go over you know, each type, and so that people can try to start the process of, hey, figuring out that sounds like me, you know, and kind of take it from there. So we'll start with the type 1 personality.
Do you want to start with type 1 or type 8 like our teachers do?
Whichever way you guys feel is comfortable.
Okay, let's do type 8.
We'll start with type 8. We like to go in head, heart, and gut types all together.
Perfect. And we'll go over all those triads in another episode. But yes, that sounds lovely. Type 8.
Type 8. Yeah. Okay. So type 8. Type 8 is on the head triad.
Gut triad.
Or gut triad. Yeah, sorry. Type 8 is on the head triad. So they are, speaking of executives, a lot of them are CEOs, leaders, people in leadership. And they're known to have a big, intense energy. They are large and in charge. They have no issue with directness, conflict. They have no issue making their thoughts known, and what they think needs to happen known. They're the kind of people who walk into a room and you're like, oh, I know you're here. Here you are. They're kind of magnets. I think that they draw like heads to look at them.
Capture attention.
They capture attention. They also being on the what we call the head triad, but also the gut triad, but also the anger triad. They tend to overdo anger. So they have no issues letting you know if they are mad, if something's upsetting to them, if something's unjust. They're going to come up against that. They're going to protect others from that. And so, with their direct conflict,
they'll say what's on their mind. Is that right? Whatever's bothering them, they will not hold back.
Exactly. However, the flip side of that is they often don't understand that they have quite a large impact on other people. And they have a very hard time owning their vulnerability and their weaknesses. And so often that's in their shadow, their weaknesses and their vulnerability. And
yeah, I kind of think about Chihuahuas.
Oh no,
that's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Bring in the heat. Bring in the
Chihuahuas. Yeah, like some people who are like smaller in stature, but their energy just takes up so much space, and it's in their overaggression that actually gets people to be more uneasy about them and to resist them.
Mm,
The other metaphor is, I don't know if you remember, like Popeyes, like Brutus, the main villain, like
mhm,
the kind of energy and attention that he draws is like, I know I'm in charge. I know I'm the boss in the room. Like, don't you dare
Yep.
challenge me.
Yep.
Or sometimes eights who have leaders over them are
mhm.
constantly scanning to see whether the higher ups are actually doing their job right,
Right.
Right.
according to their own perspective. And if they conclude that the leaders are not, then eights might actually try to fill in that space.
Yeah. And I think a lot of processing for eights has to do with like pushback. So eights in therapy, from what I've seen, I could suggest a great thing, but I know they're engaged with me if they push back. I know they're engaged with me if they're like, is that really a good idea? Or oh, that's not really how things go here. Or, I have to be
Th-
directed.
they're the type that seems to always feel like they need to be right all the time, right?
It's one of the types,
Yeah.
eights ones,
Ones.
but I
Yeah.
think that's kind of a central theme for gut types is like the agenda. Or,
Yeah. So, and
Okay.
it's a really fun, it's an energetic type that I really appreciate. I as a 2, I have aligned to 8, so I have a lot to learn from the high side of 8. But yeah.
What about type nines?
Nines would be in a lot of ways the exact opposite of the eights that we just mentioned, in that instead of expanding their energy, they tend to dissipate their energy, kind of like gas particles. And so being very fluid and flexible, they tend to shift around other people so that there's the path of least resistance. They will often don't feel comfortable being seen or taking up so much space like eights tend to feel very comfortable with in pushing back. Uh, Nines often are over accommodating and overly fluctuating and merging with other people or other established patterns so that they don't have to make decisions for themselves, because making
Right.
decisions implies what matters to you and you're actually going to take action on behalf of yourself, and that takes too much work.
They
Right.
have a hard time for sure. In fact, one of the things that I like to say with nines is, what happens to your energy when you ask yourself, like, what do I want? What agenda do I want to move forward? Our teacher Oranio always likes to say that nines aren't lazy. They'll do a lot of stuff, but not on behalf of themselves.
Right. Right. They like to keep the peace, right? They're known as the peacemakers. And if there's several things that are happening with friends around them, they will try to resolve that conflict by not adding their own input, but somehow summarizing the input that would cause the least amount of resistance.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, interestingly, like that's a great example of how then they have zero idea about what they think in the midst of the conflict around them. Right.
Right. That's right. And
Nines
then
are
we,
very good at seeing the world through other people's eyes except their own.
Yeah.
Again, another opposite of type 8.
Yeah.
then we have the type ones.
You should definitely start with that. She's very dual-wide. She knows.
So ones are also very assertive in their assumptions or their certainty, kind of like with eights, but whereas eights tend to do a big picture, ones tend to be very focused and very precise. And as an idealist type, they tend to sense what things ought to be or what should be. And then they get frustrated because actual reality is like so far away from that ideal. And so often they tend to experience and express anger that's more like low key, like humming in the background, constant agitation and irritation. They feel it in their body. They tend to be very tight and rigid and stiff. And it's kind of like not allowing the flow of life to be what it is by constantly thinking of how things ought to be.
Yeah.
So I like calling them the improvers.
Yes. Yeah. And I think something else that's a huge trademark for ones is that really loud inner critic. And I think other types have inner critics as well, in their own special ways, but ones is very classic and loud and is operating probably 100% of the time. And as hard and judgmental, quote unquote, that people may experience ones as, I think that they are much harder and much more judgmental of themselves. And so constantly trying to improve themselves and to police themselves to be that good person, not understanding that they're already good.
Right. Okay. Well, now that finishes out the gut triad. Should we make a move over to the heart triad now with types 2, 3, and 4? I know, Melinda, this is your kind of favorite triad out of all of them, and you want to get us started with type 2?
Up to that's my favorite type. All
I
of the
love
secrets of who I am.
Yeah.
So I like to say that I'm a recovering type 2. So as a type 2, as a recovering type 2, I'll hope I can do us justice. Type 2s are classically what people would call the helpers. That's often what people might know them as. I like to call them the befrienders, which is Beatrice Chestnut's term, because because helping isn't necessarily the only thing that shows up for 2s. Connection, relationships, befriending, and seducing people to us is really what we focus on. We are outward oriented types. We want to get the hook into the people we like and get them to like us. We want to be liked. We want to be loved. And we will shift ourselves in whatever way we feel like will make somebody else like us, being happy, positive, loving, caring, helping, right? That's our number. That's what we do. However, usually what we don't realize as 2s is that it's kind of manipulative, right? Yeah. We will get offended if somebody doesn't want our help. We take things, we're rejection sensitive. And so we will take things as rejection, like, oh, you don't want my help, you must hate me. You must just not love me at all. I'm not lovable, right? And that is, I think, the core fear, right? That we're not lovable. And so we contort ourselves in every way to make us positive, shiny, sweet, kind, to make other people think, wow, I want to be around them. Yeah. Unfortunately, then we can't accept it when people are around us because we're not truly being who we are. And we often don't even know who we are.
I feel like that sentiment, can be, a lot of people can feel that, and when we're talking about each personality type, I want our viewers and audience to know that you might be seeing a little bit of yourself in each one of these personalities. It's not like one personality necessarily fits all. We might have a little bit of each personality type, and that's very common to see. But you'll find though that one of these personalities do stand out. But the one that you're talking about right now, I'm just envisioning, like, I've seen myself, even though I'm a type 7, I have had plenty of moments in my life where I feel like I've shape-shifted in a way to be liked, and wanted people to rely on me. And, I would put my own needs behind and wanting like the love of others and wanting people just to like me,
And in fact, knowing your type, I know that you're a lookalike type for 2. So in fact, a lot of your type of 7, I relate a lot to. So yeah, and I think that you hit upon something else, that need to be needed. That's how we show up. Like, we try to be significant, right? We want to be significant for others. And so we lay down our own needs and don't even know them, and try to tune into other people and what we think or assume they need. So we're not always
right.
Pride. Anyway, I don't know if you have
Thank you guys for tuning into the AlignUs podcast, where we inspire a world of wellness and philanthropy. Make sure to tune in next week for part 2 of the introduction to the Enneagram with Melinda and Joanne. And for more resources and to stay connected to AlignUs and the AlignUs app release, make sure you check out our website at www.alignusworld.com. And make sure to check out our social media pages on TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook with the handle at AlignUsWorld. Until we meet again, stay aligned, stay connected, and stay anchored into the power of unconditional love. Namaste.